were using CARES Act dollars. They were using CARES Act dollars for student emergencies as well. So they, in fact, did have the components of an emergency aid program starting on their campus. We just worked to pull it together and to look at ways to sustain the funding for that. We will also work with you on developing a financial model so you can look at the return on investment of investing in a program like this. So we know that it is less expensive to retain a student from semester to semester than it is to get a new student. So we'll look at return on investment. We'll help you create action plans and then a data strategy for evaluating and implementing. So we start at the beginning by defining what emergency aid is, and we help you to define that on your campus. So some institutions include loans in the program, and some are strictly look at grant aid or gift dollars. We look at effective practices around emergency aid implementation. We help you document the forms of emergency aid and the processes that you'll go through to set this up and to administer this on your campus. We craft these plans along with financial plans and modeling for tracking emergency aid distribution. And then we ask you to participate in data collection so that we can gauge the impact of, help you gauge the impact of emergency aid on student retention. And then we'll do that as a cohort. So we look at students who use emergency aid in the fall term. That's why we're doing this program in the spring so that we can set this up, help you set this up. And have it implemented for the fall. And then students who receive aid in the fall, we'll track them into the spring semester. So we'll work with you or your IR teams to help you do that. So your team, I know that some of you have teams here on this call, but who should participate? We ask that you have 3 to 5 members that go through this academy, and that usually makes up a pretty effective team. And we ask that the individuals come from areas that have or touch emergency aid on your campus or will touch emergency aid operations on your campus. So this could be staff that are currently working in emergency aid programs. Again, it could be a food pantry or advising. We ask that you have a representative from financial aid because we do go through a process and ask you to look at this so that it doesn't negatively impact a student's eligibility for financial aid. A representative from finance and or development fundraising. We ask institutional research or data staff be involved, and then student success leaders, advisors, or faculty, people who may be involved in the process of administering this to students. So here's an example of how we use the data. So this is from a pilot cohort that we did in fall 2022. And we had more than 700 students at 3 institutions receive emergency aid services. And so we will help you track your data, and then we can provide aggregate data on the cohort. So the goal is to increase enrollment from fall to spring for students who receive emergency aid. So to keep students persisting towards their credentials or degrees and to stay enrolled. So we saw that in this case, out of the 700 students, we had a small liberal arts, we had a large mostly online adult institution, and then we had a regional comprehensive participate in this. So we had a pretty good scope of institutions. But for Black and African American students who received emergency aid from this cohort, almost 82% of students persisted from fall to spring, compared to 74.4% of non-emergency aid recipients. We saw more than a 10% overage of Hispanic and Latino students at almost 90% of students retaining from fall to spring compared to 79%. So you can see we also looked at Pell recipients. So these are just some categories that these institutions were focusing on for retention to bring up their numbers overall so that they had increased retention overall at their institution. And we helped them disaggregate this data so that they knew who was taking advantage of the aid and how it compared to students who didn't receive the aid. So I will turn it over to Katie because this was just a teaser on what we're doing in the academy and then the kind of impact that we're seeing. And she'll talk to you about next steps.
Thank you, Jill. So everybody wants to know, how do you get involved in the academy? So we have a brief 4-question application, and I put that in quotes. It's not, you're not really applying, it's really just a fit check to make sure that what you're hoping to get from the academy is in sync with what the academy provides. And you can get that application at myjanegi.org. We will send you the link to that in the email that we send that follows this. So we will send an email with the slides, with the recording. I do apologize that we didn't start the recording at the very beginning, but we'll send you what we have. And we are repeating this on the 23rd, so we can always resend you that recording. We'll be better at doing it at the top. If you want to send this to colleagues, you're also welcome to invite colleagues to that session. The fees are based on your undergraduate enrollment as determined by College Navigator, and the fees are per institution, not per individual. And as Jill said, 3 to 5 seems to be the sweet spot in terms of a team. You can have up to 10. So that is the fee for all the people who are involved. And we are also able to split that fee into 2 fiscal years if that will help make it easier for you to participate. So we're happy to have answer any questions. On the next slide, we have a list of some of our other engagements. Occasionally, people end up in the wrong info session because we always do have a lot going on. So here's just a list of what we have currently going on or coming up in the spring or summer. So if you have any questions, please reach out to info@gardnerinstitute.org. That comes to me. I will, if I can't answer your question, I'll make sure we get you to someone who can. Thanks, Jill. So now we're happy to answer any questions. If you want to raise your hand, we can always unmute you and allow you to answer your question, ask your question live.
So Katie, just to sort of explain how the academy is set up from a structural standpoint, we have 5 different sessions. So we'll do, I think, 3 weeks, take a 1-week break, and then do 2 weeks, or maybe it's 2 and 3. But we do 5 sessions that are 90 minutes. They're scheduled for 90 minutes. So we go through content around a module. You'll get access to a learning management system. And we'll put course material there. And basically, at the end of each course, you will come away with an artifact that is a report or a piece of a plan, a communication plan, a fundraising plan, a finance plan, an inventory that you can put together into a comprehensive plan for emergency aid on your campus. So each of the modules has sort of a homework assignment at the end. And that's why we build in about 30 minutes for your team to work during the session after the module. So you can get a jump start on that homework and putting it together. But it's designed then that those 5 artifact pieces create a comprehensive plan for your campus for emergency aid programming.
That's excellent. Thank you. And I forgot to say when I was talking about the fees, I know looking at the names on the screen that there are a few people from our transformation process institution. So if you are one of those schools, the fees for this have already been paid for by your institution. So there's no payment for this in addition. So Jill, I have a question. Can you give us some examples of some things that institutions have done to once they've completed this course?
Sure. So we have institutions who have emergency aid plans that they would like to evaluate and then redesign. So we had one institution that had disparate pieces of this under 4 or 5 different departments, and they were identifying somebody in their student success office to sort of oversee this. So they used it as a time to pull together all of the pieces. A lot of times the questions center around the ongoing financial sustainability of the program, which we will do a module on, and then the data collection and impact. And those two things are really tied together because a lot of times funders and donors want to see the impact of their dollars. And so they'll use the data to help tell the story of success about how smaller amounts of money for students can really make an impact on student retention and success.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a question in the chat from Shelley Parks. She said each college is at a different level of implementation and infrastructure for administering emergency aid for students. Is this opportunity only for those new to emergency aid, or will the cohort provide growth opportunities for those colleges at a more advanced level of administrating the emergency aid?
Yep, Shelley, that's a good question. That builds upon what I just talked about a little bit. So almost everybody who comes in has some form of emergency aid on their campus. A lot of times they're looking to evaluate or make it more sustainable. They're looking to make it more efficient to administer. They're looking for ways to better communicate with students and make sure that they're targeting the right students. So we will customize it a little bit to the needs of the cohort and then to working with you. And you'll also have opportunities then between courses and then after the implementation for engagement with one of us, the facilitators, either Dr. Klossman, Dr. Drake, or me, and we can help provide additional technical assistance based on where you are. That's a great question.
Excellent. And I'm being told that you can unmute or put yourself on camera if you'd like to ask a question that way. And we can also stop the recording then if anybody wants to hang back and ask a question. Not on the recording, we can do that as well. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.